Doc Rivers continues to, time and time again, not get it when it comes to getting... Oh! Let him play!
He wins. Great steak. Smells like poop.
Honestly, like if Urban Meyer wants to come to Connecticut,
Bring him on. I mean, come on. I'll take him too.
Nia Jackson, I think, weighs 280 pounds.
Oh!
can we isolate that clip? Nia Jax weighs 280 pounds. Oh!
Let her play.
From Los Angeles, this is Dave in the City, brought to you by Locks of the Week Radio. Now, here's Dave Medina.
Can you believe the action that we just witnessed? The Pelicans get the number 1 pick in the draft. Good evening, sports fans! A pleasure to have you here for the big basketball show. It is an incredible day here in the city. Good to have you with us from the Dave in the City studios in Buzzer Beat in Southern California. Unbelievable. Just some incredible Game 7 action to close out the semifinal round. And an incredibly good juice in the draft lottery this year. I mean, it had to be seen to be believed, didn't it? But it happened, and we're all trying to sort it all out here in the city. So we're glad to have you with us. Chris and Georgia will join us in just a moment as we begin our next NBA report. And we've just got a lot of madness to cover. Let's get to it. And look ahead also to the conference finals. Let's jump it. The NBA report for May 14th. Well, let's not waste any time. Let's bring in our co-host to the program. Chris in Georgia joins us after what has been probably the best semifinal round in the NBA playoffs in at least a decade and maybe 2 decades. It was really good. Chris, how's it going tonight?
Very good, Dave. Thanks for having me. Yeah, it's been it lived up to our expectations, I think, for sure.
Yeah, and we didn't have high hopes. I mean, that's what's interesting about it. We really thought that these matchups played out to really good series. 3 of the series wound up being great series. Like 1 went 6, 2 went 7. Really good times, and then we have the next round, which is underway now, and the conference final round started off with the NBA draft lottery. A lot of high hopes for the Knicks. Didn't happen for them, but we will get to all of that on the second part of the show. We also will get to the Lakers coaching news. Frank Vogel, not Tyronn Lue, becomes a coach. If you can believe it, Tyronn Lue snubbed the Lakers. That's got to be pretty embarrassing, but more on that coming up on the later part of the show. Right now, we're talking about the playoffs, and it was a great playoff. So let's start with the series that wrapped up, other than the Celtics series, which was done like after game 2. but the other...
That feels like it ended a month ago.
Yeah.
We've had like 4 shows since the Celtics got eliminated.
Yeah, I hear you on that. So we'll start with the first series after that, which wrapped, which was the Rockets Warriors series. And I said it before on our last show a week ago. I thought that I really thought that the Warriors never were truly threatened in terms of winning the series. I really didn't. And just to prove their point, we have Game 6 in Houston. This is an elimination game for the Rockets. The Rockets are leading the entire way. Maybe not the entire way, but a lot of the way during Game 6. And the fourth quarter comes down, and James Harden does very close to nothing. And Steph Curry, with a dislocated finger, who's been shooting terribly the whole series, has a great performance in that fourth quarter and leads them to victory. The kind of heart that you just don't see in very many places in the NBA. And all the props to the Warriors, because in Game 5, they lost Kevin Durant for the remainder of that series and likely a significant part, if not the entire part, of the Western Conference Finals as well. So that was huge news that broke after our last show. And with that kind of drama, the Warriors still had enough to win the series. I think most people felt like they could win the series, but I think the surprise was in the way that they just somehow stole that game in Game 6. And it was fitting for me because, all the talk about James Harden having a historic season, hogging the ball and chucking up shots. And when it mattered most, he was just not there. And that's basically my takeaway. Steph came through shorthanded, wasn't getting a lot of help other than from Draymond Green. And, I mean, there are the people who are helping too, I should be fair. I mean, Klay Thompson was good too. Anyway, this is the appropriate way for that series to end. And, Chris, I'll give it to you now for your thoughts on what has been a coronation of this dynasty run by the Warriors, such as it is, such as a dynasty could be in this modern era. But I've been flying with this because all you would hear from people, NBA writers and bloggers and whatever, is about how great James Harden was and how the Rockets are this and that, and it's just like, this isn't that good a team. And that was a moment where I felt like that our sentiments, like you and me, our sentiments were validated about the Rockets and about Golden State as well.
Yeah, well, a couple things. One, that was an exciting game because one, it was tied at the half, and one of the things that'll be forgotten about this game was that Curry was scoreless in the first half. I mean, scoreless. I mean, he had been awful, and Klay kind of carried the team. I mean, he was hitting. I think he had 6 3-pointers in the first half, and he was kind of the man, and he kept them in the game. Draymond was steady all game, made some great passes, but it's just like Curry's like kind of the forgotten superstar in this league, isn't he? I mean, you just you're about ready to write him off, and then he just goes 33 points.
The only reason he's forgotten is because he's been shooting so terribly in the last couple of series, but we're starting to find out it had a lot to do with injury. So
yeah,
I hear you on that.
It was very dramatic. He was kept grabbing his hand, and apparently he has that dislocated finger. 33 points in the second half, though, Dave. I mean, that was just a big FU to the haters,
Yes,
and it was great. I mean, I think I told you this. The Warriors are a more fun team to watch when KD isn't there. It's like I just remember, when they were just starting on this, him and Klay and Dre, and they were getting it done. But it's kind of a fun team to root for when you don't add, arguably the best player in the game right now onto that team. And it was very exciting. And and I don't hate on the Rockets as much as some people. I don't think they're a bad, I think they're a very good team. I mean, they were the hottest team in the second half of the season. It was weird. I mean, that was a strange game because Paul had such a great game. I think he had 27 points, and Harden did too. But what I felt like was in the second half, and particularly down the stretch, I felt like Harden was just he was just very passive, and it was weird to watch. I just feel like he wasn't the ball wasn't in his hands as much, and I feel like he was deferring to particularly to Paul late in the game, and it was exciting. It was very dramatic, and just to see that turnaround from scoreless in the first half. What's funny it was scoreless in the first half, Curry that is, but yet it was tied, and I was thinking, wow, this isn't. Curry's going to heat up. I didn't think he was going to get that hot, but he's going to heat up, and then Houston's going to be in real trouble. Just because it felt like, and Golden State had a bunch of turnovers too in the first half. I can't remember. I think they were in double digits. I think they had like 11 turnovers at the half, something like that. Something crazy. I can't remember the stat, but they were just kind of sloppy. And just with those numbers, I was like, wow, if Curry gets a little hot, Houston's in real trouble. And that's what happened. But it was exciting. I kind of was hoping for a game 7. But it was just, that shows you how great a team this team is and how much heart they have. even without their best player. And Curry was just kind of like laying it all out there, and just saying, look, man, don't forget about me. I won championships before KD even got here. So that was great. That was a lot of fun.
That was a good game, although it was it was an ugly game. Let's be fair. I mean, like at least the first 3 quarters were, because you mentioned the turnover.
I would argue. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt, but I would argue all these games late in the second round have been kind of ugly. The Philly-Toronto game.
That's fair.
I mean, they were fun, but I would say they've been ugly.
That's very fair. That's fair.
And I just think it's because the players get tired. But sorry, go ahead with your point. Sorry,
no, actually, I think that's we're going to hang on to that one where you said everybody was getting ragged, because I think that's actually a very good point. But I will add a couple of things to your comments, and pretty much just giving you attaboys for a lot of them. Like the one where we said the Warriors are easier to root for without KD. It's absolutely true. And if you're thinking it's just an interpersonal thing, it's more than that. Just look at it in basketball terms. What were they doing when he was there? It was a lot of ISOs, and it was just him just dribbling the ball a lot. And he was succeeding with it, but he just doesn't seem to have the same fit into that offense, at least this year, like you would expect, like you would see when he's not there. A lot more motion, a lot more passing, just very little passing when KD was playing. Even though he really is great. I don't think that's necessarily his fault. It's just the way it is. And I think him not being there creates more motion, and you see more performances from other players. And that just the basketball element of it makes that easier to root for in general. But then there's the obvious angle to it, which is the Warriors are easier to root for without Kevin Durant because they're not a super team. They're not invincible. Or at least as invincible as they were with him. I mean, he is the best player in the NBA today. And, you already had a team that was good enough to win 73 games, and then you add him. I mean, that leaves a sour taste in a lot of NBA fans' mouth. So I think people will find the Warriors a little bit more interesting without him. And then there's a third angle, which I don't know where you are with this, but... And I'm sorry, I'm not actually talking about the game yet, but... but... Kevin Durant, as a guy, seems to be tough to take. He just seems to be whining and moaning about everything. And I don't know where you are with that, but I think that all played into it. Seeing Steph's redemption, I mean, he steps it up in a big spot. And that is something that, you said it with Harden, it's the same thing that happened in Game 7 last year in the Western Conference Finals. He just doesn't want to take the moment. He's so passive. He just doesn't have any feel for wanting to take over a game when it matters to that degree. But this time you can't use a Chris Paul excuse because Paul was there and he actually played pretty well overall, but it wasn't enough. Your superstars have to play like stars in a big spot, and Harden continues to not do it. And that's where I just can't get behind it. I can't get wrapped up in anything he does in the regular season, because in the end, you have to win these games. And if he's not going to seize the moment, then how can I ever take him seriously? So, that was just what I had as far as adding on thoughts to that series. And one more thing. Unlike you, I didn't want this to go 7. Because if it went 7, you would have had 3 Game 7s on Sunday, and it would have been a shame to see that Nuggets game buried in late night. I'm glad that it was on at 3:30 your time, 12:30 my time instead. So that was in the back of my head with that series. So I think it worked out. So anyway, let me get your rebuttal thoughts.
No, that I wasn't even thinking about it from that angle. Like the whole scheduling thing is weird because Saturday there was nothing. There was no NBA at all. And then they would jam Sunday. I guess that's just where the schedule would work out because the Golden State game, that Game 6 was on Friday night. So they'd have to play it on Sunday, but couldn't they have played one of the other games on Saturday? I don't know. It seems that is weird. I totally wasn't even considering that angle. And you're right. Sunday would have just been jammed with NBA, and that the Portland game would have been late night. And I didn't end up watching that. We'll get to that later, but I didn't end up watching that live because I had to do something. But yeah, you're right. That's a good point. And about KD and his personality, it's funny, like when as you were saying, I was thinking about him with when he was at Oklahoma City. I never I guess maybe, I don't know why. I just never thought about his personality didn't come out and really until he came to Golden State. And I don't remember, thinking, oh, he's a bad guy. Just, he's just got some insecurities, let's put it that way. And it just kind of came out when he went to the Warriors. I feel like, you're on a bigger stage with Golden State than we were with Oklahoma City. And, part of it was, frankly, he was overshadowed by the bigger personality in Westbrook with Oklahoma City. I don't look at him as one of the real villains of the league, though. That's that might be a little strong. He's just, the whole thing to me was the fake social media accounts he had and just what that means. But I just kind of, it was kind of like going back in time before, it's been like, what, this is his third season with the Warriors now. And it just felt like, the classic Warriors, I guess, in a way.
Yeah. Classic Warriors is a good way to put it. It's kind of old school Warriors, and not really old school. You can't. I don't think anything from 3 years ago can be old school, but
yeah, old school Warriors would be like, I don't know, Chris Mullin for me.
Yeah, exactly.
PMC. Do you remember that, Dave?
I don't remember. I didn't. It was. I do remember that it happened, but I wasn't watching those games that intently back then. But I was younger, but
yeah.
But those were good teams. Absolutely. Fun team.
Yep. It was entertaining. But I do agree. I wasn't saying it was pretty. I definitely agree that it was kind of a messy game. I mean, but it was still entertaining. Definitely.
Yeah, no question. And that was just the beginning. Now we're going to get to the really good stuff. The really amazing Sunday afternoon/evening 2 Game 7s. And you think, Game 7, so much can happen. Anything can happen in a Game 7. And boy, did anything happen. It was like all the stuff that you dream of in a Game 7. We'll start with the early game from Denver. Nuggets, who really didn't have a lot of playoff experience going into this game. Going against the Blazers, who have a little bit more, not a lot more. And you were faced with a situation where two teams who had their moments struggling to shoot the ball. Started with Portland. They couldn't really shoot very well. The Blazers started this game down 17 points. Or you could say the Nuggets were up 17 points in the second quarter. And now, just as a quick aside, I was watching this at my parents' house with my dad, and we had some relatives over for Mother's Day, celebrating Mother's Day. And he's like, "Oh, this game is over." And I said, "No, I've seen some crazy things happen in the NBA playoffs, So it's not over. It's not completely over yet." And surely enough, the CJ McCollum leads the Blazers to come back, not in one sitting. Like it was a very slow comeback, but they came back and overcame a 17-point deficit on the road to take over Game 7 on their floor. And that fourth quarter was really something to watch. McCollum was not going to let them lose. And then towards the end, you had Damian Lillard making huge three-point shots to augment CJ McCollum's performance. And ultimately, it was really about Denver's defense. They couldn't stop him. They could not stop him the entire game, and it cost them in the end. Denver had a great season, but I think that is a scenario where the inexperience really cost them. And not to say Portland had great experience themselves, but I personally think that Stotts outcoached Malone in this entire series. He had the matchups down. He knew what to exploit. He really knew his personnel, and I thought that was the difference in this series and in this game. And I got to give a lot of props to Portland. I mean, coming down back from 17 back in a Game 7, I can think back to when the Lakers did it, down 13 at home. I thought that was crazy enough, but to do it on the road, that's pretty amazing. So that was my thought on this game. Yeah, like you were saying, some bad shooting by both sides in various parts of the series, and Game 7 was no exception. The was it Denver? I think missed 16 straight 3-pointers. I mean, you're not going to win any game when you do that, let alone a Game 7 at home. So, you know, they know what they did, and the defense was pretty bad. So it was a triumph for Portland in a lot of ways.
Yeah, definitely. From the Denver side, the number that jumps out at me is that they shot 10.5% from three. This isn't a home game. Come on, guys. That's miserable. And, Murray's got to take a big chunk of blame there. I mean, let's face it, he was awful. He, 0 for 4 from three. He shot 22% from the floor, 4 of 18 overall. Just a horrendous game. And, a lot of those were open looks too. I mean, if anyone wears the goat horns, in my opinion, it's him. But yeah, I mean, you're right about McCollum. I mean, he put the team on his back. He scored 22 points in the second half, and really just made up for Lillard, who was flat out awful too. Shot 3 for 17 from the floor, Dave, 17.6%. Amazing that they won when he was as bad as he was. But yeah, the other guys stepped up. Evan Turner had a nice game, scored 14 points off the bench. He'd been horrible prior to this, and just kind of out of nowhere, just filled the gap a little bit for them. And also notably was 8 of 9 from the line, which was where he scored most of his points. But yeah, I did not watch this live. I was able to DVR the NBA TV recap and just, they kind of throw it together in an hour and watched it there. But yeah, I think both of us thought Denver was going to win this. I mean, just, the home court advantage. I've felt all along that just the mismatches down low would work out in Denver's, which was great. I mean, he did everything he had to do. I mean, he scored 29 points, had a bunch of rebounds, 13 rebounds, I think, and just got the job done. But the rest of the team really let him down. Man, just some awful shooting performances. I would just that's what surprised me the most, was just how bad they were shooting the three.
Yeah, and the takeaway from that is, I think you have two young teams who could be on their way to big things. I'm glad you brought up the Damian Lillard performance. For all intents and purposes, would you even say he was good in Game 1? I guess he was, but because he had 36 then. But after that, he had been brutal. He was terrible from the field for this series. But it was a great series. It was, as we were talking about a week ago, this is my favorite series of the round. It was the best series of the round, too. And it was fitting that a Game 7 would be that close and that tight and that dramatic. I mean, that was pretty much everything you could expect in a Game 7. I mean, all you really needed was, the only way that could be better is if you had a game-winning shot. Well, Chris, the next game had one of these.
It's off to Leonard, defended by Simmons. Is this the dagger? Game! Series! Toronto has won!
That's from TNT. That was a game-winning shot at the buzzer with the game tied at 90. Kawhi Leonard finishes off a 7-game series, not quite as back and forth as the Portland series, but that was the best shot I had seen in many years. I couldn't believe it. It was bouncing. It bounced up. The ball bounced up. It looked like it was bouncing away from the rim, and somehow it bounces the other way, and then it's like rolling around very slowly, and then it falls in. Just a great way to end the series. I was so happy. And what a great moment for Kawhi Leonard, who put the team literally on his back and just he just had a fantastic series, even when everybody else around him wasn't doing so hot. Game 7, not quite as dramatic of a difference in the way he played versus everybody else, but he clearly was the best player on the court the entire series, and that's including the Sixers. And both of us have found the Sixers tough to take throughout the course of the season. So we thought this was a great way for this series to end. And, people were saying that Embiid was crying coming off the court. I saw that moment, and I guess he was crying. I mean, that was pretty intense, like losing a game like that. But we're not shedding any tears here for the Sixers. This was fantastic. I'm going to give it to you for the recap of what you thought from that Game 7.
Yeah, that was a lot of fun, that game. The end was there was something very cinematic about it, first of all. And you kind of hit on it really well. But the way the ball, and you couldn't see it, you couldn't see this as it was happening live, because we were looking at it. He's in the corner. He got the inbound pass and he ran to the right corner. So we're looking at it from the opposite end when he's shooting. But the way the ball hit the rim, it kind of hit the front of that rim. And it's like, it almost doesn't, I've watched it a number of times now. It almost doesn't make sense that it would go straight up. Because the way it hit the rim, it looked like it would just kind of bounce back toward Kawhi, who's shooting the ball, but it didn't. It bounced up. And then, as you pointed out, it hit, it bounced about 4 more times after that. It was very dramatic. It was like a movie. And then, of course, Kawhi, after he shoots and it bounces up a few times, he gets into like a squat in the corner watching the ball, and he looked calm. He almost looked like he knew it was going to go in. And then, of course, the ball eventually does go through the hoop, and he's sitting right in front of the bench, and they just go bananas. And you're right. Yeah. Immediately Embiid is like crying. Inexplicably, Marc Gasol is standing right next to him, and he starts hugging Embiid and like trying to comfort him. It was very dramatic. It was a wild scene. But yeah, you're right. I've never seen that. That was crazy. It just defied physics. But yeah, what an exciting finish. Yeah, I mean, Toronto, man. I mean, for a team that just has a lot of depth, they really were overly reliant on Kawhi. I mean, he just 41 points really just kind of carried the load for them. And the other shooting performed awful. I mean, other than Ibaka, and Ibaka had a great game. He had finished with 17 points and 8 rebounds. But man, and it was rough. I mean, if Kawhi wasn't going to score, they were in big trouble. This team looks all out of sorts, and it'll be interesting. I guess we'll talk a little bit about the next round, but Milwaukee, like I said, it feels like they've been off for about a month, and I wonder what, if any, impact that will have on the series, just because Toronto. I mean, let's face it, Toronto looked gassed. I mean, Philly did too, but Toronto looked gassed, and I wonder if the fresh legs Milwaukee has will be a big difference in that series.
I think it could be, but the rust factor can be a factor too. We saw that immediately in the semifinal round for Milwaukee. They looked terrible in Game 1, so I don't know how to play that. It could go either way.
Yeah, I don't know either. Yeah, and it's look, I've been thrilled. I mean, like we had a phenomenal, one of the most memorable second rounds, in my opinion. And this series was a big reason why, because it felt like this series just had so many twists and turns. It just felt like, okay, Toronto's gonna, they're gonna walk all over Philly. Philly wins the next 2, and it's like not so fast, and then all of a sudden, then Toronto gets the momentum back. It just felt like there was so much back and forth and momentum swings. And Philly, I think we've talked about every as the teams get eliminated, we didn't do so much for Denver, but Philly faces a really interesting offseason, just for the simple fact that they have Redick and Jimmy Butler and Tobias Harris are all free agents. Of course, they did say that Brett Brown's job is safe, so we have that clarification, because there was some speculation that so that's not going to happen. But they have a lot of moving parts to their off season, and it'll be interesting to see where they go, and frankly, who wants to stay. I'm not putting Philly down, because it would be a great destination for a player, but there's been whispers that Butler may want to go to Los Angeles, or may want to go to New York, or whatever. So we could be looking at quite a different team next year. I mean, look, I mean, you have Embiid and Simmons as anchors. You can kind of figure out the rest. I mean, that should be a playoff team anyways. But they'll be a fascinating team to watch, just because they do have those three fairly important players on their on the expiring contract. So we'll see there. But kudos to Toronto. I was happy for them. I mean, there is some animosity between my team and theirs, but the fans are great. It was the Air Canada Center at the time, and the fans are fantastic. And I was happy for them, man. I really was. And I felt kind of the same way I felt about watching Kyrie. I felt about Leonard. It's like, how great these guys are, and then they show you again on the big stage, It's just like the couple of FU moments there. And it was great. It was really entertaining.
It's also a moment of contrast between last year and this year for Toronto, and I am very happy for the fans. They deserved a moment like this, because last year, almost exactly a year ago, we were talking about how they blew a big lead to Cleveland and LeBron James, and that was probably one of the most embarrassing defeats in their playoff history.
Yeah.
And a year later, they're going to Game 7 against a very much hyped Philadelphia 76er team, beating them at the buzzer. I mean, it doesn't get any better than that in terms of redemption stories. It's a redemption story for Kawhi Leonard too. I don't know if you call it redemption, because it's kind of his doing, but he did seem like he came out of the shadows after that really weird and awkward season with the Spurs that led to a trade of his. And it was even possible that Popovich was trading him to Toronto as a sort of an FU to him, and instead he takes Toronto and makes him something. It's pretty great to see that with this series. So I can't say enough about Toronto. Does it amount to anything going forward? No, I don't think they're gonna really do much against the Bucks, but I think they can always have this moment and they can keep it with them, and that's pretty cool.
Yeah, and both teams, it's worth noting. I mean, I'm sort of glad it didn't go to overtime, because both teams really shortened their bench in Game 7. Toronto played. They basically played seven. Not basically, they played 7 players. They had a 7-man rotation in that game. With Ibaka and Van Vliet taking up minutes off the bench. And Philly, I think, only played 8. And so basically the starters were playing like 40 minutes for the most part. And if it went in overtime, we might have seen some real ugliness. It might have been bad. I mean, Embiid in particular looked really, really spent. Man, there was some plays at the end where I was kind of like, what the heck are they doing? And I pointed out to you where Embiid,
that play was awful. Oh my god!
Well, it was
what were they doing?
Was that inbound play where Simmons could barely inbound the ball. It was about, I don't know, a few minutes left, and couldn't get the ball in, and then they set up with Embiid at the perimeter, and it's just like, why are you doing that? I mean, and he ends up with the ball in his hands and almost loses it. It was really, really a mess. And he honestly looked tired, Dave. He really did. And so I don't know. We'll see. I mean, the other thing to watch about with Philly is just Embiid and like, what is this guy? I mean, when he plays, he's usually, he looks like a force, but he gets hurt a lot. And, it delayed the start of his NBA career. And, he's banged up a lot. And in this series, he got sick a lot. He was like, he had a cold and he had like a stomach virus and all this. So, I don't know. I mean, I hope he's around for a long time because he's highly entertaining and he's one of the big personalities in the game. And I hope that continues. But there's room for concern there, I'd say.
Fair, absolutely. And like you said, he's a really, really big part of the NBA right now. So I don't want him to be ushered out that quickly. On the coaching, you mentioned the play. This is just one of several examples of Brett Brown just bumbling a coaching decision. I'm not impressed with him as a coach. However, with that said, I think the Sixers handled the coaching scenario perfectly. With this group, I think it's more important to continue the continuity of having Brett Brown as your coach over, trying something fresh now, because there's really nobody out there that's really screaming at me for the Sixers to take. So I think it's the best option they have. So you may as well just keep him at that point. And is he the coach for their future? For the way it's set up, probably. But he's just going to keep holding them back. He's not that good. But at the same time, this team is so talented. I think they'd be okay for the foreseeable future.
Yeah, no, I there aren't that many good I mean, who are the good coaches? And if you don't hire him, who are you going to go get, I mean, if you don't hire him, if you don't keep him, I mean, then you got to kind of scramble. And then, yeah, I mean, we could talk about it later. Cavs got one of the premier college coaches this week, which came as a big surprise. But yeah, I mean, you almost have to look at the college ranks or something because, it's a pretty thin crop. Wouldn't you say, Dave? I mean, the Lakers got turned down by Ty Lue. Yeah. I mean, and he won a title. I mean, there's not a lot of, there's not a lot of guys waiting in the wings. Let's put it that way. I mean, I don't know. I mean, I'm not as up on the, maybe the hot assistants right now. I mean, Nurse for Toronto was one last year. But yeah, it seems like it's like some slim pickings there, and maybe Philly feels like, look, we were together as a team. This team, the Butler trade happened mid-season, and Tobias Harris, they got him at the deadline, so maybe they feel like, look, we really didn't have time to kind of get to know each other and play well together, which makes a difference. I mean, it's not like baseball. You just plug a guy in the lineup and he's gonna hit. It's, there's a lot that happens on the court. And so maybe that's the feeling, is like we really haven't had time to gel, for lack of a better phrase. And it's not, I mean, Brown, did get him to the third seed and in a tough Eastern Conference. So let's not rock the boat here. And so I think there's something to be said for that. I'm not a huge fan, but I don't, it's not, this is not Jason Kidd, or.
Yeah. Speaking of hot young assistants, he's actually neither, but yeah. Oh man. All right, we'll get to the more coaching stuff in a few minutes, but let's now get to the draft lottery results. Here we go. So let's count it down from the 14th to the number 1 pick. Number 14, your Boston Celtics.
Oh,
I know you weren't happy with that.
Well, it's fine. It's fine. I mean, look, this, and I'll talk about it later, but it worked out pretty well for the Celtics fans because of the Memphis thing. Memphis getting into the top of the ladder. Well, I'll leave it at that. It's fine. The Celtics had probably, they had a one landing the first pick. Actually, that wouldn't have gone if that pick had ended up number 1 overall, we would go to the Sixers. So that's a bad scenario right there. And you didn't want that to happen.
That would have been rough.
1%, yeah, but it was like a 1% chance that would happen. So, and then second, third, and fourth was still under 2% for each of those positions. So it was a real long shot that pick was going to make its way into the top 4. So all things considered, I'm happy with that. Sorry, let's keep going.
Okay.
I digressed.
Well, just to preface the remainder of this draft order, there were 3 teams who had an equal percentage chance to win, as opposed to previous years where it'd be one team with like 30% odds to win, and then everybody else had fewer than that. Instead, they divided into having 3 teams with the same larger percentage, but there were 3 of them. There was no specific team that had a larger percentage than anybody else. So the top 3, meaning the three largest percentages to win, were the Knicks, the Suns and the Cavs. I think were the 2.
Yep.
Or the Chicago, one of them.
No, Chicago was 4th. Yeah, it was Knicks, Suns, Cavs had 14% chance of getting that number 1 pick. Which, and by the way, I just, not to interrupt your thought, I love some works, and I'll just leave it at that. But go ahead.
Yeah, I like the format more now. I would only add one qualifier to add to that, where you do prohibit a team from entering the draft lottery 2 years in a row. That sounds pretty strict, but I think it's a way that you can help eliminate tanking. That's sort of
hold on. A team cannot be in the lottery 2 years in a row. So top 14 picks.
Well, it's either that or eliminate them from a top 5 pick if you're in the lottery 2 years in a row.
Yeah, I don't know. My thoughts on the whole lottery and it's just tanking in general is overrated. I just think it's such a crapshoot. Because you just really don't know what you're going to get. But go ahead,
I'll explain why I brought that up, and the reason is because the Cavaliers had like 5 number 1 picks in the last 15 years. And that's ridiculous. Like, it really is. Let's say 17 years, or whatever. Let's say 17 years. Because I got to throw LeBron as part of that. I mean, that's ridiculous. Like, are you even trying to win if you're going to end up having a number 1 pick that many times? So, I just had enough of them. So we're going to, put that aside for a minute, because we're going to get to them. All right, so let's get to the rest of the draft order. Number 13, Miami Heat. That's kind of a weird one because they were pushing for a playoff spot near the end. Charlotte Hornets at number 12. Minnesota Timberwolves at number 11. And that's kind of funny because they look like garbage a lot of the season. Anyway, Atlanta Hawks at number 10. That's pretty disappointing. I know you were thinking they'd get a top 5.
Well, I wasn't necessarily thinking that. I was hopeful, though. I mean, I was. Look, if they somehow got the top pick in the draft and got Zion, I would have been going apeshit. But, I think they had 2 lottery picks. I mean, one of them was top 5 protected. The Dallas pick was top 5 protected, if I'm not mistaken. So the best they could have done with that was 6, because otherwise Dallas would have kept the pick. But it would have, it would have been exciting to if the Hawks ended up with, this generation's great talent in Zion, and of course it didn't happen. It was a long shot. I mean, I think I knew that I think their slot was 6, so it wasn't, it wasn't necessarily strong odds that they would get in there.
And your gal, Jamie Gertz, represents once again.
Yes, she did. She does well. I was trying to, it's fun. Again, another sidebar, but I was trying to remember what I'd seen her in. And like, I feel like I'd seen her in more movies, but I guess she was she was in 16 Candles, John Hughes movie. She was in Lost Boys, which is the one I remember her the most from. And then she was also in Twister. And then she did a lot of TV and stuff along the way. But yeah, it is every time the draft rolls around, she shows up on the in the lottery. I always get texts like, "Wait, what's up with Jamie Gertz? Why is she there?" It's so funny. But yeah, she is married to one of the Hawks owners. So good for her. She gets to go to the lottery every year, or well, not every year, but every year that they are in it.
Mm-hmm. Well, you don't want to be in it too many times. I mean, that's not
exactly. Exactly. Yeah, they've been in it a few times in the last few years, but things are looking up for them. So. Yep.
That's pretty cool. So now let's get to the rest of the draft order. Washington Wizards at number 9. Screw them. And Atlanta. That's my comment. My analysis. All right. Atlanta again at number 8. And this was a killer. Chicago Bulls number 7. I don't think Bulls fans thought it would be quite that low.
Yeah, I mean they were the 4th overall. So yeah, when you have two teams jumping three teams jumping in the top 4, which I don't know, man. I want to see a few more years of this stage to play out because I think this is the perfect format. I love it. I really do. I just think like if you're like bottom of the of the lottery, you have a decent chance of jumping in there. I mean, Memphis was 9 or 8, right? And they got the 2nd overall pick. I mean, I don't know. I kind of dig this format.
It's a big improvement.
It really is. I want to see a few more years of this. Also it's. I didn't watch the lottery live, but I think it's more entertaining this way, isn't it?
It was certainly entertaining for a couple of giant fan bases, Lakers fans and Knicks fans, because now we're getting the top 5, and both of them are still alive, and all kinds of conspiracy theories about how the Lakers are fixing the draft lottery, and how it's all going to be about Zion and LeBron, and oh my God. Well, we continue. Number 6, the Phoenix Suns. This has not been a good year for the Suns. I mean, they've had a lot of turmoil, and that stinks. They can't really do much. I mean, in a draft where like you get 3 sure things and you're number 6, that's pretty bad. Cavs, number 5, screw them too. I mean, again, I broke that down way too many times at the top of the draft lottery and not doing much with it, and they still stink. It's like, you obviously aren't running your franchise well if you get that many number 1s and you can't make that into a playoff team other than when LeBron's there. When LeBron's not there, they're useless. So I'm done with them. Number 4, the Lakers. People were going LOL. Some people were going LOL Lakers, and I didn't really think that made sense because they had a 2% chance of getting the number 1 draft pick. 2%. And like you said, it was like milk. It's like 2%. So getting 4, I'm not going to complain about that. I mean, they can't do anything with a 4th pick in this draft, but maybe they could use it as trade bait. So I think that would probably be the way they go. And just to quickly step aside on the Lakers, what do you think they do with that number 4?
Oh man, God only knows. I mean, I guess. I mean, so it sounds well. First of all, let's put it this way. So Pelinka's still the GM, but it sounds like Kurt Rambis has like he's kind of filled Magic's shoes. I mean, he's sort of like the president, or he's basically taken over Magic's role. Is that correct? I don't even understand what's going on there, but yeah, I mean, look, they can go a number of ways. You point out a trade, which obviously you would think, okay, the trade would be to New Orleans for as part of a package for New Orleans for Anthony Davis, but that may not happen. I don't know that's the most intriguing thing, but With the Lakers, I don't know. I mean, they could go a million different ways. The ESPN, I think it was Jay Billis, said this kid from Vanderbilt, Darius Garland, who is a really small point guard, but very quick and athletic, might be the pick there. Interesting though, I think he played like 4 or 5 games. He only played a tiny amount of games, and so we're just looking at such a small sample with these college players. But man, that is crazy small sample. I don't. Tankathon has Jared Culver. I'll have to look at a lot of the mocks because I don't follow college as much as I do the pros. But Jared Culver, of course, we got familiar with a lot during the tournament at with Texas Tech. I don't know. I mean, I feel like this is one of those drafts where the top pick is very clear who that's going to be, and it has been that way for several months now. But I still don't think I think there's some real talent to be had. I just it is just a noticeable drop off from 1 to 2 and further. So we'll see. I don't know. I mean, what do you think? If you're the Lakers, what are you looking at?
I think you look at a trade because this is a weak draft class, and the only way you keep 4, and you can't even do this because by the time you get to the draft, you have to have a decision on whether you're keeping the pick or not. I think if the Lakers were to trade their draft pick, I would think they do that before the draft actually took place. But we do see it in the NFL where teams will trade their draft picks in the middle of the draft, so I can't confirm that. But what is a 4th pick going to get you? Like, I don't think there's much there. I just think it's like Zion, Ja Morant, and to me, that's it. I mean, some people say, like the guy you mentioned from Vanderbilt. Other people say Cam Reddish, who I think is a huge mistake. I don't think he's an NBA player at all. I think he's going to be brutal. And then who else? What about that guy Edwards from Purdue? I think it was.
Carson
Edwards, yeah.
Yeah, I'm seeing I don't know. I mean, who knows how this goes? But every mock I've looked at is bottom of the first round or even in some. So I don't know. I mean, his draft stock probably improved significantly from the tournament, but I don't see him going that high.
No, and I think that's completely accurate. Like he's not really much of a defensive player. He doesn't pass. He just chucks shots. So it's like there'll be a place for him in the NBA, but I don't think he's a top 10 pick either. So that might be fun. Might be a good bench player. I don't really see much else. So
here's the thing, though. This is my attitude. It's just that and I said it's a crapshoot before. Biggest thing, we're looking at guys who played 25 games in college. I mean, you're not seeing, when I was growing up, you kind of knew who Michael Jordan was because you'd seen him for 4 years, and when assessing a player after 4 years at age 22, when he's more physically mature and so forth, is, you just have a better grasp on what these guys are. I mean, Cam Reddish was one of the top recruits in the country. I mean, I think he and Barrett and Zion were all top 5 recruits. I mean, it was bonkers. But yeah, I feel like it's just they're such unknowns at this point, and I don't know if I were the Celtics, I'd be thrilled if they had the 4th pick. I really would. I'd be fine with it, and I totally try to improve my team with that. I wouldn't be looking to make a trade, but I don't know. We'll see. I guess I raised the point about Pelinka just because I still. I don't know. And he's the guy who assembled the team that got Luke Walton fired. I mean, Luke Walton lost his job because this mess of a team was, I guess, his responsibility. And Pelinka, the guy who put this team together, the only team that LeBron has been on that hasn't made the finals in or hasn't made the playoffs in over a day. He somehow has a job. I mean, Magic Johnson wasn't fired; he quit. Pelinka wasn't fired. Luke Walton was. It's a weird situation to me. And would I trust him to make a great trade? No, I'm not saying it couldn't happen, but the front office gives me pause. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, and I completely agree. I don't trust him either. And I think you said this just now, but it's beyond the front office. The issue is at the top, and we've talked about that already. So there's no reason to go into it again. I'm getting rumblings that Magic is going to have some big salvo on Monday, and I don't even know. What do you
salvo on Monday? What could, I mean, salvo happened like 3.5 weeks ago.
I would think. I mean, like, what is he going to reveal? What else is there to reveal at this point? Everything.
Oh my gosh.
Really, I mean, the shit really hit the fan, and I don't know what else there is that you can even reveal that hasn't been revealed. I mean, there's smelly poo all over this franchise at the moment, so I don't know. Okay, anyway, let's get to the top three. So a lot of anticipation now. The Knicks feeling pretty good, but then they get the number 3 pick, and all the air goes out of the balloon in New York. And I think the hype that for the Knicks getting this pick, valid, but as many have pointed out, when you have a 15% chance of getting, or 14% chance of getting the pick, you also have an 86% chance of not getting the pick. So it's not that big a surprise statistically, but nevertheless a big disappointment for the Knicks fan base, thinking that there was some hope in their future, and now they're denied. I mean, number 3 is not bad. You can still do things with number 3. You can get John Morant with number 3. You could get, you mentioned Culver at number 3. You can get a bunch of guys number 3. And there might be one of the 3 big ones might still be there. Just as long as it's not Reddish, I think the Knicks will be okay.
Yeah, again, it's the Knicks and Lakers have essentially the same problem. It's just bad ownership. And although the Knicks, I guess, I mean, I don't know. We'll see. I'm just kind of, the Knicks are going to be fascinating in the offseason. I'm sure we'll spend a lot of time talking about them just because of all the rumors surrounding them. But yeah, certainly, there was a lot, look, they finished with the worst record, and there was a lot of talk. Oh, the Knicks could have, the first pick in the draft, and they could have Zion and KD and Kyrie, and one of those ain't happening now. But yeah, I just, again, I'm skeptical that their front office does the right thing, and we'll see what happens. I mean, I kind of have flipped a little bit on the Porzingis trade. I mean, I still think it was great because it's just, they traded an asset to clean up their own mess, but maybe there's hope there, and we'll see what happens with this pick. Like you said, I mean, RJ Barrett might be the guy they look at it from Duke. I have a weird feeling like this draft is we're gonna know like probably the top 4 picks before the draft even happens. I have a strong feeling. It's just it feels like one of those drafts where you just kind of know those slots, and then after 5 or so, we're just gonna be guessing. But I don't know. It's just a hunch on my part.
No, it's gonna be. Like I said, it's gonna be a weak draft. So I mean, as long as I always felt like the emphasis would be the top 3 for a reason. I think that's really where it's at. So anyway, the Knicks didn't get it. So now it's number 2, and number 2 goes to the Memphis Grizzlies, which I still think is generous the way that they were tanking some of these games. And number 1 goes to the Pelicans. Who guessed it? Who would have guessed that the Grizzlies would get 2 and the Pelicans would get number 1? And for New Orleans, it creates a very awkward situation where they'll be faced with a decision to try to get both Anthony Davis and Zion Williamson on the same team, or trade Davis and get a haul of pretty good young prospects or other players to formulate the new era of Pelicans basketball, with Zion. So it's not a good basketball market, there's no doubt, but it's a very interesting and albeit awkward situation, Chris.
Yeah, I wish I wasn't able to watch this live because I was putting my kids to bed, but the drama, and I'm sorry I stepped all over you're doing the reveal and I'm saying, oh yeah, Memphis got 2 and the Pelicans got 1. I'm sorry about that. It's my bad. But the drama when this was going on must have been pretty amazing because when it was happening live, because they announced, okay, well, we know the top 4 picks, but not in order. So you got the Lakers, you got the Knicks, the Memphis, and New Orleans. And, you're playing out all those different scenarios. And then they go to commercial break and they just kind of draw this out even further. And then you find out who's got who. But yeah, I mean, so much of the offseason is going to be about AD. And now it's almost like, well, what does New Orleans really do this offseason? Can they draft Zion and convince AD to stay? I mean, then all of a sudden it's like, wait a second, what is this team? Like they got Zion Williamson and AD, and maybe AD stays, and they got Holiday, and all of a sudden, like, that's not a bad team. It's a pretty good team. It should a team that could be vying for a playoff seed, you would think, if all goes well. So and then of course it takes that trade chip out of the hands of the Lakers and Knicks, who during that same commercial break were probably thinking, wow, if we get number 1, does this this goes a long way when we can trade him to the Pelicans, and we're in the Anthony Davis sweepstakes, right? I mean, that's a big part of the the drama there, and of course the way it played out is of course equally fascinating. I don't think Memphis at any point would draft Zion and not keep him, but the other 2 teams certainly there's a possibility. I don't know. I mean, yeah, I think like I said, and I started to point this out, I'm just happy the Memphis pick. Memphis gets in the top 4. It means they keep the pick. They don't fall out of the it didn't fall into the area where it wasn't protected, and the Celtics would have gotten it, and so that it rolls over to next year where it's top 6 protected, I believe. I'd have to double check that, but I'm pretty sure that's the case. And it's supposed to be a better draft. And I think what year is it that they're gonna get rid of the one and dones reportedly? Is it next year or is it 2 years? I don't know. But either way, and the Celtics also have 3 1s already, so 4 would be killer. I mean, it would just be like too much. So I'm really glad the way this worked out, and it didn't end up in the hands of the Celtics. So good there. And I still think, like let's say Memphis gets Morant. I still don't feel like it's that still looks like a lottery team to me. Let's put it that way. Morant, I love Jaren Jackson Jr., but I mean, if you draft Morant, I mean, it's kind of, he's a point guard of sorts, and with Conley already there, how does that backcourt fit together? Or maybe there's a scenario where they don't draft Morant. I don't know. We'll see. But yeah, I was really happy with the way that played out. I was happy that neither the Knicks nor the Lakers, sorry, Dave, got Zion, and it worked. It ended up working out okay for my team, and the storylines are going to be fascinating with the Pelicans. Let's face it, it's going to be really interesting. So we'll see what happens.
Yeah, I mean, definitely some decisions for these teams to make, and it's going to be an exciting offseason once again for a lot of these teams. Me personally, oh, I'm sorry, you were saying?
No, go ahead. You
well, I was just saying, I hope the Pelicans trade Anthony Davis. He quit on them. It was clear. He just had no interest in them. He totally gave up on them. Why would they want to keep him around? You may as well try to start fresh and young.
Yeah, I still don't like. We talked about the Lakers package, and and how much they, were willing to give up apparently at the trade deadline, although Jeannie Buss said that wasn't true and fake news and all this. I don't know. I don't know what's true anymore, but yeah, it'll be interesting to see who's involved. I mean, if the Celtics lose Kyrie, are they going to make a play for AD? I'd have to think no, that they probably stick with their young guys, and then maybe the offers aren't as sweet as what they were getting at the deadline last year. Who knows? We'll see. Yeah, I also want to. You mentioned the Cavs. I just want to echo that, man. I'm just really glad they didn't get it. I mean, dude, Celtics have gotten the number one pick once in my lifetime. It was 2 years ago, and they traded it. And the Cavs have it 4 times in this century, and enough with that. I mean, and as much as I think it's ridiculous, because a lot of times the number one pick isn't the best player in the draft, and it doesn't work sometimes. In the case of Anthony Bennett, you get a real bust. And I would argue Wiggins has been a bust. He was their most recent number one overall pick, and the Cavs did well to get Kevin Love for him, but yeah, I'm just tired of seeing the Cavs get the first overall pick. So I was glad that they got that. Of all the teams that got knocked out of the top 4, there's Cavs. I'm pretty happy about that. Bulls, I'm kind of indifferent on, and like I said, I was hoping the Hawks would do better, but that's how the chips fell, and we'll see what happens. But yeah, I'm the Lakers are fascinating, Dave. I mean, I almost feel like, I don't know. I mean, they can go a million different ways this offseason, which is why they're going to be fun to watch, because they still have a lot of money to spend. I mean, all these guys they signed in the offseason basically were 1-year deals. Even though we made fun of them, I mean, they gave themselves wiggle room, because nothing was long term. I mean, it was all like 1-year contracts. So we'll see what happens there. I mean, they could be in play for Kyrie or any of these guys, really, if you think about it. So
yeah, let's quickly get the coaching scenario with the Lakers chatted about too, because we're on the topic. I don't think Frank Vogel does anything for me, but you have told me that you like Frank Vogel, and you're not alone. Many others have talked about how good how decent he is. But my thinking on this is that he's just the middleman for Jason Kidd, who they really want to be the head coach. And I think what's going to happen, the Lakers will go through some portion of the season, and then there might be a little bobble. And when the bobble comes, they're going to dump Frank Vogel. It may not be this year. It may be next year. And then they'll just move Jason Kidd to be the head coach. And I'm not going to like it. So that's just my thought on it. I just feel like this is all a charade. And this is a mess. But if you take it in a vacuum, Vogel, not bad. Like, it's better than Lou. I mean, Tyronn Lue would have been the absolute worst. A Lue-Kidd combo, I mean, that would have been painful. But this is okay. I've just, again, what has Vogel really done? Like, he's taken the Pacers to, like a few games in the playoffs. He didn't even make the second round in 2016. He kind of messed around the Magic, because I know that they were terrible under him. But the Magic are bad. Like, I don't think that's really his fault. Like, the Magic are just poorly managed altogether. So, I don't know. I don't really have a feel for that. I mean, I guess he could be good, but it just doesn't seem like it's going to end well for the whole team with him and Kidd. And eventually there's going to be a power struggle, and then maybe Braun's going to be the coach one day. I don't know. So let me get your thoughts on the scenario.
Yeah, I think Vogel's fine. You could do a lot worse. Like I said, there just ain't that many coaches sitting out there with experience, much less playoff experience. I mean, Tyler Lue is one and Vogel's another. Vogel did lead that Paul George. I mean, he coached Paul George team with the Pacers to to 56 wins. He had some good years there. Obviously, yes, the 2 years he was there were a big disappointment, and but again, it's not a well managed team. Although they did make the playoffs this year under Steve Clifford in his first season, so that's a big knock on him. Your other point about Vogel being kind of middleman is, I think, just spot on. More people know that Jason Kidd is an assistant with the Lakers than they know who Frank Vogel is the coach, the head coach. It is just a weird hire because nothing Kidd has ever done has impressed me as a coach. I mean, there's so much baggage there, and
I don't even understand why does LeBron like him? It's the one for me. Like, I never really knew that there's this thing where he really liked him, and I'm like, why?
I think didn't they played on the Dream Team together? Didn't they play in the Olympics?
Probably.
Yeah, I think that's or they definitely played internationally. I don't know. I mean, look, if you're a player, why is it like, oh, I got to get my friend here to coach me? What is that? I mean, I don't understand that move. It's like, I like Ty Lue, so let's bring him in. Or, but yeah, you're right. It's very similar to what was his name? David. Who was a coach with the Cavs, and Lue was an assistant.
David Blatt. And then there was
Blatt,
Lue. Yeah, it's exactly that.
Yeah.
That
was that kind of same scenario.
Yeah, that was
like,
pointed out. We
got to have LeBron's buddy as a bench coach.
It's stupid, is what I think it is. Like, look, if I'm a basketball player and I like a guy, like, let's say I like, let me see. Let's say that I like Cookie Monster. Do I want Cookie Monster to be the coach of my basketball team? No. I like Cookie Monster. He's a good friend. He likes cookies, but I don't necessarily think he's going to be good at coaching. So I'm not really following that logic myself.
Yeah. Plus, you almost got to go Big Bird there, right? I mean, Big Bird could probably throw it down, don't you think?
Cookie Monster could throw it down too, though. Just
okay.
Cookies, not basketballs. His height advantage is terrible. Like, he would get dwarfed. You thought Muggsy Bogues was short. That guy's even shorter. So you have a point. Big Bird has the reach.
Yeah. The only thing Cookie Monster's dunking is the Chips Ahoy in his glass of milk.
That is true. That's a fair point. Oh my God. So.
No, I agree. I do not understand this, David. It is a weird move. That Lakers team is bizarre. Yeah. It is really strange. Yeah. But like I said, like the moves they've made haven't been, indelible. I mean, they can kind of go out and be aggressive in the free agent market. I don't know exactly how much. I can check how much cap space they have, but I think they have a significant amount of cap space because they had two room for two max contracts last year, and they used one of them on LeBron. Let me just double check this because I want to know what their cap figure is, but yeah, it seems like they have, they can spend, and shoot, I'm kind of having trouble finding it, but I don't know. I mean, maybe they can kind of right the ship in the off season. We'll see.
Right on. So let's close it out tonight with some predictions for the conference finals. Start with the West Final. The Blazers are already playing the Golden State Warriors. We both thought that this would not be as good a series, and it makes sense because the Warriors are just, even without Kevin Durant, I think they're that much better than Portland. Just from the experience alone, I mean, they really have a lot more experience. And it's as simple as this. If Lillard is going to shoot that badly in the next round, they have no shot. They cannot hide his that bad a shooting performance throughout an entire series against the Warriors, because the Warriors are going to just blow them away with outside shooting, whether it's Steph or Clay or somebody else that jumps up and steps up to the table, whether or not Durant is in there. So I think that this is a huge advantage for Golden State. And I will say Warriors, I'll be generous, I'll say Warriors in 6. Well, all right, let's get your thoughts on the series.
Yeah, I mean, you said if Lillard's going to continue to shoot like that, well, he's off to a good start. He's 2 for 8 tonight from the floor.
Oh my God!
And yeah, I was just watching. Though I was watching just the last play, and he was kind of clutching his hamstring and kind of wincing. And so, yeah, I don't want to read too much into it, but it looks like he might be fighting some kind of injury or something.
That would seem, that would explain a lot, wouldn't it? Yeah. That's too bad.
Yeah. So I thought Houston was going to be a tougher matchup for Golden State than either Portland or Denver, really. And I think this goes 5. I really do. I want Portland. I like Portland, and I really want them to do well. But I don't see it, and we still don't. And this is in addition to the fact that we still don't know when Durant or if he's coming back. I mean, there's just there's been rumors. Oh, he looks great, and it's like, yeah, but he hasn't even stepped on the court yet. So I don't know anything further about that, at this point. And so, yeah, we're kind of, all this in spite of the fact that their best player is not available. And they're up by 12 right now. And so we'll see what happens there. But yeah, I'm not too optimistic about Portland's chances in this series.
Okay. So let's now go to the East Final, and I'm going to give it to you for the breakdown and your prediction.
Well, yeah, I mean, I started to talk about this a little bit, and it really is the rust versus rest thing, right? I mean, Milwaukee's been kind of, they've been watching the games like me and you for the last week and a half. Whether that's a factor, I don't know. I do feel like, they're at full strength now, though. That's the other thing. That's a big key. Getting Brogdon back, and he was awesome for them this season, and and Greek Freak, and just the way the Philly series played out. And I know this is not. This is not necessarily how it's going to go in the next round, but yeah, the Raptors just became it surprised me, in fact, how one-dimensional they became, and just became dependent on one guy, and the guards for Toronto were just awful. I mean, Lowry, I can't believe this guy ever was an all-star. He just looked awful. And really, the thing that struck me, Dave, was how lacking in confidence everyone looked on this team, except for Kawhi, and they all just kind of like stood around and got the ball to him and hope he made a shot. I made a point last week about how close they were in the standings, and how how somewhat evenly matched these two teams were. I mean, they were kind of neck and neck for much of the season. But I feel like things have changed, and the Philly series exposed them a little bit, and I think Milwaukee's gonna. I don't particularly see this as a. I hope I'm wrong, but I don't see it as an interesting series. I think both of these series could go 5. Really, I really do. I hope I'm wrong, but Milwaukee looks like they're on a mission, Dave. I mean, I think they can win the title. I mean, that maybe I'm not saying much because they were, arguably the best team in the league through the regular season. I mean, certainly the metrics love them. I mean, their offensive rating, defensive rating, they're the best team in basketball. The net rating was, I think it was like an all-time high in net rating. I mean, this team looks really, really solid. So, I like Milwaukee, and I think just it's crazy because I thought Toronto was going to be the deeper team, but Milwaukee's deeper. I think they're better rested. As much as I like Kawhi, I think Milwaukee is a better player, and I think I don't think this even goes 6.
Wow. No, I'm not, and that wow is unfair because I completely agree with you. I think I don't think this is a bigger mismatch from my point of view, especially in the East series. I think that also goes 5. I'm gonna go Milwaukee in 5, and I mentioned before I will go Warriors in 6. But the Warriors in 6 is, again, I feel like I'm giving the Blazers a bone. I'm thinking, okay, maybe they sweep the 2 home games or something like that, or maybe they'll steal 1 out of the 2 coming up. But you're right. It's like these teams are just so much better. And as we were talking about, really both teams have been masking bad performances by key players. And in Toronto's case, it's like the whole team other than Kawhi, which is pretty bad. So I think the Bucks, being as well coached as they are, as deep as they are, and the fact that I think Brogdon's going to be in for the series, I mean that's just all bad news for Toronto. So I think this is where it ends for this team. I want to be wrong too, because I think a Game 7 with those 2 teams would be fun. Giannis and Middleton versus Kawhi, and not Lowry because he stinks in the playoffs, but maybe him and Siakam. That would be a good Game 7 if they were good enough to get that far. So, but for me, I feel like both series will be relatively short.
Yeah, there's a point on Brogdon that I think is interesting. I'll have to look up the full list, but Brogdon shot 40% from 3, 50% from the field, and over 90% from the free throw line. And there's I think in the NBA history, there's 6 or 7 guys who have done this. One of them was Larry Bird. One was Steph Curry. I think he did a few times. But it's only a handful of guys who have done that. And I'm not putting him on that level, but it's one of those stats to me that is really fascinating because it paints a picture that this guy's really efficient and probably a little underrated. I think one of the guys was Mark Price. So there's guys who are not necessarily superstars, good players, but not superstars. But most of the players, if I remember correctly, are in the Hall of Fame. I mean, it was a pretty impressive list, or will be in the Hall of Fame in case of Curry. So I think getting Brogdon back is huge. I mean, that is a really, really important guy on their team.
Right on. Well, I think that's going to close it up. When we return next week, we'll be in the middle of the West Finals. We could do a show. We might skip that week so that we can have a full recap of the round. We'll play that by ear, ladies and gentlemen. And our next show will either be a week from now or it'll be 2 weeks from now when the NBA Finals are about to begin. But either way, it's going to be it'll be fun to watch these games, even though we both think these will be short series. And we can certainly look back on the great round that was the semifinal round. So, Chris, any final thoughts before we all both go our separate ways tonight?
No, I kind of feel like I'm leaving us on a downer. I hope I'm wrong, and I hope these series are really entertaining and exciting and well played and very competitive.
I'll say this: I think they're going to be better than the NHL right now. Jesus, you see those series right now?
they've been blowouts. Like,
Yeah.
look at the score 6-2. It's like,
It's so bad.
is it hockey? What's going on
I
here?
don't know what happened. Kind of a similar scenario. Like the hockey was really good in the previous round, and this conference final has been a dud.
Yeah, interesting.
I'm very surprised.
Well, yeah, Portland's actually only down 6 right now, so maybe this is maybe this is they've got a little spark here. So we'll see.
It would be kind of cool if they could steal game 1. They've been keeping it pretty close. Yeah, we'll see. Hopefully they can make it keep making it a game.
Absolutely.
All right, enjoy the rest of it, my friend, and we'll be back soon. Take care, buddy.
All right, thanks so much. Have a good week.
You too. Thanks, Chris. All right, so that's our show tonight. We'll finish off this edition of Blazers versus the Warriors, and with that, we say goodnight. We hope you remember to check out our latest Ditch Cow retrospective, the top 5 episodes of 2013. It just dropped yesterday, so look for it at ditcow.com and your local podcast app. I'm Dave Medina. You can find us on Twitter at ditcow. We're at Dining with Dave for personal thoughts, and we are on the web at ditcow.com. We'll see you next time.